Welcome to our kitchen. My name's Tracy, and at Matters of Taste this week, I'm going to show you how to make the most beautiful cream of tomato soup. So great for lunches or for dinners if you want to go meat free. So I've just got some day old stale bread. I'm going to make some Parmesan croutons to go with these first. So as you can see, I've got a mixture of bread here. It's really just what I've had in the freezer. So it's all our own homemade delicious bread that we make here at Matters of Taste in different classes. And I'm going to add some olive oil, a couple of tablespoons of olive oil, and some Parmesan cheese. I'm just going to sprinkle that around. It's a technical term, to sprinkle your croutons, and pop that on the tray. And as soon as this goes into the oven, we can get on and actually make the soup as well. So I just thought this is rather nice. Cheese and tomato, great little combo. Most people enjoy that combination, and this sort of melts and the cheese goes all sort of golden and caramelized in the oven, and the croutons go all nice and crispy, and then we'll just sprinkle those on the top. Just washing my hands, and then we can pop those in the oven. I've got the oven on at about 180, and I think it's going to take sort of 12-15 minutes for that to crisp up those beautiful croutons. So in it goes. So I am going to put the timer on as well, because you know what happens sometimes, don't you? When things get forgotten, never. Okay, so 11. I'll put it on for 12 minutes, and I'll have a little look at that. So to speed things along, I've got some onion already chopped in there, and I'll show you that in a second. I decided when I made this recipe up years and years and years ago that I would put some herbs in it. And this morning I picked some thyme from the garden, some rosemary from the garden, and these are the herbs of my choice for this tomato soup. It does really give a lovely subtle flavour, actually. You don't have to go sort of over the top with these. The little thyme leaves, if you actually pull them backwards, they do tend to come off a lot easier than pulling them forwards. But it doesn't matter if you've got some little stalky bits in there, like the end bits. Don't put in all the stick bits. They're not very nice to get stuck in your throat. But the tender tips of the thyme leaves are perfectly acceptable in this soup. I've got a sprig of rosemary there again. The other thing, pulling it backwards is definitely the best way to go. Much easier than trying to pull the leaves forward, because they grow that way, and you just sort of brush over them in the end. So we'll give this a little bit of a chop, and I'm going to finish off frying the onions with the herbs and a little bit of garlic as well. So chop, chop, chop like this, and then I'm going to crush a couple of very small cloves of garlic. So up to you. If you like it really garlicky, add more garlic. If you like it less garlicky, don't put as much garlic in. But oh, such a pingy garlic crusher. I've totally lost that. So ours is going to have slightly less garlic in. Such a cool garlic crusher. Thanks, Dream Farm. So I was going to have slightly less garlic in, because the other garlic clove's gone somewhere over there. So round to the soup. Just take the lid off. And did I have a spoon here? I thought I had been organised with a spoon. So I have fried a chopped onion in here. If you're not 100% sure how to chop an onion, then go and have a look on the Cooks Collective. We do have a KISS video about, so Keep It Simple Sweetheart video, showing you how to chop an onion. It's most important. The amount of onions that I've chopped over my lifetime of cooking, I'll tell you what, so many of them. All right, so we do need to get this just fried just a little bit. You don't need to fry it too much, because this is the base of the soup. Oh, please, I wish you could smell it. It's really lovely. This is the base of the soup, and as I said, the onions have been frying for about 5-10 minutes on a medium heat. So they've become opaque. They've been frying in the butter, and I'm going to add some flour into here and start creating the base of the soup. So it's important to get the onions well cooked, and I've also seasoned them with a bit of salt and black pepper as they're cooking as well. So that's important, to season the base of whatever you're cooking so that it really, then it can bring all its lovely flavours to the actual soup itself. So I'm going to add in a little bit of flour. So I'm making this with a roux, so flour and butter, to thicken the soup. Couple of different ways you can thicken soups, of course. One is adding potatoes and blitzing it up, or adding far more vegetables, usually a starchy vegetable, to thicken a soup, but just to give it that lovely creamy flavour. I was watching a nutrition program the other day, and they were saying about tinned soup, and you know, what tinned soup has actually got in it, and it may say that it's got all these lovely natural ingredients in it, but they've been so processed that you probably are not getting very much goodness out of that soup anyway. And look, my hand goes up first. I used to love cream of chicken soup as a kid. It was my favourite. And the other one is, I said cream of chicken, didn't I? Because that was my favourite. And cream of tomato soup as well. And it's just really very simple to actually make it yourself, and it just tastes so much nicer, and it's got no sugar in it apart from what's naturally in those tomatoes. So I've made sure that I've cooked this for a couple of minutes, cooked so that the flour has become a little bit sandy, and I'm going to add some tomato paste to that now. So this is like a little flavour bomb in here, and it adds a lovely depth of flavour to the soup. And so we'll add that, and there again, needs to be cooked a little bit, because if you don't, it really just tastes of raw tomato, and we don't want that. We want it to taste of cooked tomato, because it's so much nicer in a soup, especially a hot soup. So whenever you add tomato paste to something, always make sure that you cook it for a little while. Now, as I'm stirring this around, I'm also going to say, hope, if you're watching and you've got any questions, please post them in the comments underneath. If you're watching us live on Facebook or the Cooks Collective live stream page, or on YouTube, you can get in contact with us anyway during the live broadcast and ask me any questions you want about this soup, or if you've really got another burning question about something else, probably cooking is the best thing to ask me about. Then just let me know, and the cameraman can relay the question to me during the show here. So I have, now that's gone in, I have some chicken stock here, and I'm going to add that. I have warmed it up a little bit, so hopefully it won't take too long to come up to a simmer. I'm going to add some tinned tomatoes as well. We're going to add some fresh tomatoes in a minute, but I'm going to add the tinned tomatoes in a second. Just wanted to add a little bit of stock. You can see how we've got on the bottom of that pan, we've got all this lovely sort of sticky caramelized bit, and to deglaze the pan a little bit to start off with, like this, is a very good idea. And just make sure that all that flour is going to get beaten into the liquid and form a smooth soup. This one we're going to actually blend at the end, and I'm going to use my stick blender, but we just need to get this organized. I'm going to go slightly higher on the heat, and it doesn't really matter whether you add the tinned tomatoes before the stock or the stock before the tinned tomatoes. Just make sure you are making sure that you're making sure you've got all of that lovely stock and flour and everything mixed in together, because if you start mixing it in too quickly, what will happen is the soup will turn lumpy. You'll be able to get it out eventually with the stick blender, but you won't actually be able to see exactly how thick the soup will actually go, because you'll have bits of roux, which is the butter and the flour, sort of just floating around in there, rather than it actually thickening the soup. So with the stock, as per usual, make your own if you can. That would be brilliant. But if you're just starting off in the kitchen, get yourself some decent commercially made chicken stock to make this soup, and you'll be halfway there to making a beautiful fresh tomato soup. So good chicken stock from the from the shops, just check out the ingredients and check that it's like made from whole foods, not just made from dried stuff reconstituted. And there's some wonderful local producers here, even in Perth and in Australia, who make really, really good quality stock. It's just so much cheaper to actually make your own eventually. So there again, Cook's Collective, that'll show you how to make your own chicken stock. Really not that hard. So I'm going to season this with a little bit of salt because I know what the stock is like, and I know that the tomato need that balance of the salt in the soup to make it taste absolutely fantastic. So I'm going to pop the lid on and just leave that for a few minutes while I show you how to prepare the fresh tomatoes to go into the soup. So you can see I've got some red ripe tomatoes. No point in making this if the tomatoes are a little bit green or yellow or they're not properly ripe. So if you can buy the vine ripened tomatoes, you probably get a better flavour from those. And we're going to take out the seeds from the tomato, because if we put the seeds into the soup, what it will do is it will dilute it. The seeds can be I want a cream of tomato soup. I don't want a tomato soup with bits in it. So we'll take the seeds out just by cutting the tomatoes around the center, sticking my finger inside. It's sticking it inside and pulling out the tomato seeds. So if you cut them from sort of like stalk to tip, what you'll find is I think it's called karma. You know, when you cut through and you've cut like right the way through that bit there, and you can't actually get your fingers in behind the seeds, or even if you cut them into quarters, you're taking out these precious bits of tomato flesh as well as the seeds to get them out. So always cut around the middle of the tomato, and it's super easy to get the tomato, this stuff that is going to really dilute the soup as well as drip all over the floor. I needed one of my Dream Farm ones for that, because that wouldn't have happened if I'd had one of those. All right, so once you've got tomato juice all over your shoes, then you can just dice the tomato up like this, fresh tomato, and that tomato soup smells fab already. Says the cameraman, joining in today, isn't he? He's alive behind this camera. All right, so let's go back round. It's nice. It's just him and I in the kitchen today. It's very quiet. It's like Matters of Taste library kitchen. It's really nice and quiet. So that's been bubbling away, and we are going to leave this cooking for 10-15 minutes. Now, for the purpose of this video, I'm not going to leave it cooking for 10-15 minutes. I'm going to leave it cooking for about 5 minutes. I will put the lid on, and that will show you basically what happens. The tomatoes will soften up enough in that time. I'm just looking for my cloth. In that time, the tomatoes soften up, and I can blend the soup and you. Now, it may not taste as good as if I'd left it cooking for 10-15 minutes. As in life, you know, when you're cooking, the ingredients have got to get to know each other. So a lot of the time, if you cook really quickly and you don't give the ingredients enough time to get to know each other, that it actually is not as tasty. So if you try and cook something really quickly, usually it doesn't work, unless of course it is quick and it is a stir fry and it's meant to be quick, and that's super. So that's our 12 minutes for the croutons. So let's have a little look at those as well. Thank you, oven. So they're looking delicious. I've also got some spaghetti squash in there as well, just in case you're wondering what the aliens are in the oven, the yellow aliens. We're just doing a lovely spaghetti recipe. So here are the croutons, not quite done. These little bits at the front are going really, really well. I'm not going to put my fingers on them because it'll be hot, and cheese does stick, melting cheese. So you can see how the cheese melts and it gets all absolutely yummy on there. And if it just given another 5 minutes in the oven just to finish off melting that cheese and crisp up the croutons that are sort of on the inside. The outside ones are done, as you can see. We'll just move that around a little bit. Pop that back in for another 5 minutes, and that'll just be absolutely delicious. And when this cools down, you can actually sort of almost snap it off. You know, like making those little Parmesan crisps. That's how the Parmesan will turn. But you do want that Parmesan to colour up a little bit more. So I'll pop it back in for about probably 3.5 minutes. I'll try 3, okay? 4 minutes might be a little bit too long. 3 minutes might be not quite long enough, but let's have a little look. All right, timer, 3 minutes. That was 2. Okay, that's 20. I just wanted to clear that. That's crazy. 20 minutes. I wonder if it'll go 3 minutes now. 2 minutes. Let's do 2 minutes, because by the time I've gone to 3 minutes, we've done a minute, haven't we? Talking about the timer not working properly. All right. So just while we're waiting for that to finish off, and we're waiting for our soup to come to a simmer, let me check this. Let's just have a yes. We're fine. So just give it a little bit of a stir now and again, because whenever you make anything with a roux, so your butter and flour, if you don't stir it, sometimes it can get caught on the bottom of the pan. And when I say caught, as in it sticks to the bottom of the pan, the flour sticks to the bottom of the pan, and it may burn or it may catch. So it gives you a horrible burnt flavour, which we definitely don't want in this tomato soup. So just quickly, while we're waiting for the croutons to finish and just brown up and crisp up, just wanted to let you know that the Cooks Collective Masterclass this month is more about soup. So I've made a soups masterclass with Asian flavours. So we've got some beautiful soups coming up on the 1st of August. Those will be released, and there is one of the cameraman's favourites, which is a Chinese corn soup with you whisk eggs and drop the eggs through the soup at the end, and then you put soy sauce and spring onions on the top. It's absolutely delicious. We've also got how to make your own Tom Yum soup. Now, usually we'd go out for Tom Yum, wouldn't we, to a Thai restaurant. In fact, it's really a very simple broth to make at home. Freezes beautifully and is, as I said, very, very simple to make. So I'll show you how to make that one. And the final one is, what is it, Mr. Cameraman? I don't know what the final one is. 3 of them. Oh, I know. He's looking at me like, oh, I can't remember either. The final one is that classic pumpkin soup with Southeast Asian flavours in it. So got a beautiful creamy vegetable soup. We've got a fabulous chunky style vegetable soup as well, with a corn soup, and we've got a broth. So 3 different techniques of making soup and 3 different flavours, but all with the Asian slant to it. So it's really, really nice. So the timer didn't even go on. There's something wrong with that timer, isn't there? So bing, 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 bing. That's it. The timer's going off. And I'll bring those croutons out now. That looks a bit better. Lovely. Very, very nice and crispy. So if you can leave them for a few minutes, they'll crisp up beautifully. And you can definitely do these in advance and do them in advance, let them cool down, and then you can just crumble them over your soup when you are ready. Let's take this away and bring our soup around here. The only other thing I'm going to add to this soup now is, final thing, is some milk. And because I've said it's cream of tomato soup, I do want to add a little bit of milk. I'm not going to go so far as to add cream to it, but I do want to add a little bit of milk to that, just to give it that sort of creamy, sort of texture. So just using some full fat milk, and see how even then, just for a few minutes, that the tomatoes, just you can tell that it's cooked rather than a raw tomato in there. So whilst I'm sort of pushing it to the limits of cream of tomato soup, I think that'll be really quite nice, actually. So in goes just 100 mils of milk into there. That is optional. Don't have to. If you're dairy intolerant, don't have to, although we've got butter in there. Anyway, so it's really tricky. So I'm going to give this a good old whiz up with the stick blender. Now, the other thing that you can do if you really want a super smooth soup is to pop it through a sieve as well if you want to. And that's totally and utterly up to you as to how smooth you want your soup. But when you think that your soup is just about done, blend it a bit more. And that's how I've sort of got my soups to be as smooth as I possibly can. So the stick blender is super useful. Otherwise, you can put it into a food processor or, a Thermomix or a blender, because that will blend it up really, really well. But I just find the stick blender really useful. So the last thing that I'm going to do, let's check on this. The last thing that I'm going to do is season my soup to make sure that it tastes really fab. So today I'm not going to, am I going to blend it? See, if it was cooked just a little bit longer, it would probably go a lot smoother than that. But let's just go with the flow for today, because we're coming to the end of the show and everything else is ready to go. So I have a couple of bowls here and my ladle, and I'm just going to ladle in some of this soup. Yeah, if it was cooked a bit longer, it would be thicker and smoother. Thick and smooth. Sound like my men. Sorry, Mr. Camera. Only joking. There was an advert like that, wasn't there? Thick and smooth tomato something or other. Anyway, so next week, to let you know, next week we have another beautiful soup. And next week I'm going to show you how to make a cream of chicken soup, which is super awesome as well. It's just a little joke I made up then as I just thought about it. Super awesome. Oh, did I taste it? Let's taste it. Let's pretend that those ones are really nice in there and that the taste is absolutely perfect. But I think a little bit more salt and then that will be perfect. A little bit more salt, a little bit more cooking, and your soup is going to be stunning. So ditch that can of soup and make your own. Let's have a little taste now. Different spoon. That makes such a difference. Just a little drop more soup. And in go these beautiful crunchy croutons on the top. Really gives it a fabulous texture difference. And there you go. Some gorgeous soup for you to have on a cold winter's evening. So thank you so much for watching me this week. Brownie will be back next week, although next week's chicken soup is pre-recorded, but you will still get the lovely recipe next week. So the recipe is online on our website for 7 days and in the Cooks Collective whenever Cooks Collective members want it. So we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks.